refined from that, or have you kind of pushed away from that over the years?
No, unfortunately, I do. Because I give speeches as well, so I'll
Mhm.
record them and watch and cringe. I cringe on everything. I hate the sound of my voice. I hate my face. I don't like to be on video. All of that is outside of my comfort zone.
But in watching it, you've been able to make the improvements. I've been back and forth. Will I watch myself, and if that gives me like a negative feeling about everything, and I'm not as authentic the next time, or but also if I don't watch myself, how do I improve? So I'm back and forth about how I'm gonna
Get that?
reach for improvement. If it's gonna be through watching myself or maybe just your feedback, I'm not sure
Yeah.
yet.
Do what works for you. I have to kind of watch myself because I don't. I don't know how I look to other people or my gestures. I'm Latin, so I make a lot of gestures like this. So I need to, for speaking purposes. I've never recorded myself on any of my podcasts, so this is a new skill set.
Okay.
For me. So I think we should start with our background. So I'd like to interview you first.
Okay, fun. I'm ready.
Okay, so first, tell me your name and tell me where that comes from. And then I want to know how you ended up here.
Okay, so my name's Janaiah von Hassel. Where my name comes from, Janaiah, was a dream that my mom had while she was pregnant with me. I'm the second oldest of 7. So my mom had a little girl, and then I was the second, so she was decided that I was a boy. And she said she had a dream shortly before I was born and thought, Janaiah is a weird name for a boy, but okay. So then I was born, and that's how I got my name. There's Arabic meaning behind it that means the harvest, so that's kind of cool.
That.
Yeah. Last name is my husband's last name, von Hassel, so that's from German descent.
Okay,
So.
cool. I
Yeah.
had to ask because I was
Yeah.
like, that is a unique name, and as someone with a unique name, I want to know all about it.
It's a mouthful.
Okay, so I met you at Channel Live Oak sponsored channel at a networking meeting. But tell me about yourself. Like I know about Winnow, your
Mhm.
business. I know you're a kick-ass businesswoman, 7 figures, 2 years. I downloaded that very quickly. So tell me how you got to today, to podcasting.
Okay, it's such a loaded story, and I'm not even sure where to start in the timeline, but I will take you back about 5 years when I moved here. I moved here, I had 2 sons at the time. I have 3 boys now, and my youngest is 3, but I moved here a little over 5 years ago. And we moved because my youngest at the time, my middle son, had severe special needs, and the weather in New York was very cold and it was impacting his health. And we came here for a better life, thinking that the warm weather would improve things for him. And so we'd never been here.
I didn't know you were from New York. I'm from New York too.
Yeah, I'm from Albany area of New York.
Listeners, we just met 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago. We'll tell you the story. It's a fantastic story. Okay.
Yeah, 2 weeks on Thursday, I think. It's so fast and furious with you, and that's the tempo I love. So I've loved that I don't have to hold back. You're like on it. We're just moving, and here's my hand. I'm tucking this hand away.
So I'm from Queens, New York. What part of New York?
Albany area. Okay. So yeah, we moved down here with our 2 sons, and my husband worked for GE, and I had always done some recruiting. I started with GE recruiting many years before that, but primarily I was a stay-at-home mom with a little bit of, I always had a side hustle, always. That's just me. Yeah. Whether I was launching a cleaning business or a blogging or I have like 15 business cards. So the one that really worked out for me was Winnow Services, which is a recruiting firm that specializes in scaling tech startups. But that was something that's happened that's really boomed for me in the last 3 years. If you would have asked me of all my endeavors, where would I find success, I wouldn't have guessed that one. But it was a passion of mine, honestly, because of my own chase for self-actualization. I love working with startups where CEOs sit around a table, these founders have an idea, and 5 years later, they have companies with hundreds of people, if not thousands, working to the same end. It's amazing.
Yeah. I love that when you mentioned chasing self-actualization, because it's, I think, one of the key words, if we were to do one of those bubbles, those word bubbles, would be passion. Is following your passion.
So that really is a part of, I say the birds brought me here. I have always had an affinity for following my passion, and sometimes it made me look crazy. I'm so glad that I ended up finding some business success, because outside of that, it was like, what is this girl doing? And then once I had some business success, everyone left me alone.
Yeah, that validates you immediately, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That lets you kind of go woo-woo in secret.
Yes, there's a lot of keeping a lot of how I've manifested or come to these places under wraps, because I think in the corporate world, it's still not widely accepted. But a lot of times in the corporate world, we're using the same strategies, we're just calling them different things.
Okay, so training. Now, this would be a good point to ask me about myself so I can tie in
Okay,
the corporate.
so tell me the same about you, Marisol. What got you started?
Remember that we're training.
Yes, this is my training. If you want to be an incredible podcaster too, train with us.
So what brought me to chasing self-actualization? So my journey's
Another lesson. This is one of my, every hour or so I give myself a message. I don't do overwhelm.
Oh, nice. Affirmations.
Yes.
Word bubble.
Yes.
So my journey probably started, I would say 23 years ago when I became a mom. I became a mom to twins. I had everything you would think on paper that you would want: 2 healthy children, a successful business with my now ex-husband, beautiful home, everything. There's, on paper, there should be no reason that I wasn't happy. Lo and behold, I was not. And I went through, I call it a spiritual awakening, but it's still taking me time. And I had to do a lot of work. So I went to therapy, and I consumed so much self-help. I've spent a fortune in self-help. And one of the self-help, I think it was probably Brene Brown, one of her courses was about creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this realization that I had stopped being creative when I had entered the workforce. That actually probably when I entered college. Like it was a decision. Like, you can't be creative and make money. It's one or the other. So I decided to start podcasting in secret. I didn't tell anyone. I just went, in my little office, and I started recording this little podcast called Shit You Can't Make Up, which I don't recommend you go listen to. But it was the beginning of my podcasting journey, and that first show was all me just bleeding on the mic. It was me processing, me dealing with my shadow. And if you listen to it from the beginning to the end, I start out an atheist, and by the end, I'm traveling to India for a month to do meditations.
Oh, that's so great. So what year did you start it, and when did it end?
2014, and I did it for about 2 years.
Okay.
And then I moved on. I like you, became very multi-passionate and did other podcasts, and then went to work for a company, went back to corporate. I've been in corporate for close to 30 years in the business process outsourcing industry, which is BPO, which is contact center, which is call center. long history there, and that's where my professional background is in. And I was able to merge both in my last podcast. I went to the company and said, hey, you need a podcast. And the industry didn't do podcasts at the time, and we did it. We were first to market. Now all the other BPOs have podcast networks. But that is how I ended up here. And then how I ended up here with you leads us to our second question of today's podcast, which is our intention behind this podcast, Chasing Self-Actualization. So I'm going to start first. I'm going to let you ask me what's the intention.
Okay. So Marisol, tell me, what is your intention with this podcast, Chasing Self-Actualization? What are you hoping that the listeners feel, think, and hear from what we present to them?
Okay, great question. My intention is to find a community of people who are chasing their self-actualization. I don't present myself as self-actualized. I present myself as someone who's been chasing it for a long time. And like I said to you, that first brunch that we had, I want other people to experience what I've been experiencing for the last few years, which is happiness, which is alignment between what I want to be doing, what I say, what I do. And I found, I'm just going to say it, it's a magical way to live. Like, you live in faith. I trust that whatever is meant for me is in my best interest. I believe Albert Einstein said the biggest decision you have to make is, do you believe it's a hostile universe or a loving universe? I wholeheartedly believe it's a loving universe. So I don't see that reflected in our society. I don't see that reflected with my children, with their friends, in society in general. You just don't see it. And that's why I want to put this content out there, because I don't know, we don't talk about chasing the best versions of ourselves. We talk about healing, we talk about manifestations, we talk about all these other key verbs or words, but we never, after Psych 101, I never heard about it again.
Yeah. And so I'm hearing your understanding of it is basically a state of being in flow, and an understanding that what is meant for you is yours. You can't miss it, you can't lose it. Is that safe to say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, and to get here immediately, it just happened probably in the last month, and it was maybe the last year. The last year, I'm gonna burp. Yeah, that's coming up. My longtime mentor and boss was retiring, and he gave about a year's notice, and I knew that was my kids were in college. My youngest was going to turn 18. I knew that I was starting a new part of my life. I knew that the job as I knew it, my life with my children as I knew it, all that was changing, and I could start seeing the last 10 years, what I've learned, what I've accomplished, what lessons I've learned, and I could never have imagined it. God is incredible in how he, she, the universe, whatever gender you want to ascribe, puts you into situations for you to grow and learn. And so I couldn't see it when I was in it, but now I could see that I was healing my religious trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of religious trauma from my religion of origin. I'm Catholic. I was raised Catholic. And I say I'm Catholic because I don't think you can, if you were born into it, there's nothing you can do. I don't practice Catholicism. I'm not current. I can't take communion. But I had to heal that Catholic trauma that I didn't even know I had. I thought I was beyond it. But when I started working for the last company I worked for, the owner, who's one of two people I think is self-actualized in the world, is probably one of the most holy people I know. And what he has done with his company and his nonprofit, and his dream is to self-actualize as many people as possible, like towns. And he's doing it. And that was the company I worked for.
Yeah.
And when I was in that company, I was doing the podcast for them. A coworker said to me, really, it was like, wow, like you're glowing, you're just so happy, and you just see there's a difference in you. And I was like, I wanted to say all the things that I know to believe to get there, but there's this thing that you just kind of feel like in a corporate environment you can't be truly authentically yourself, at least for me. I had to compartmentalize some things. So I was motivated by this leader who kept talking about self-actualization. And then I was called back to wanting to do a podcast for myself, not to do it for a corporate entity, but where I could curse, where I could, just be myself and not speak for a company. So I was praying because it's hard to quit and leave a 6-figure job and a big title, and knowing I had security for the rest of my career. I started praying, I'd meditate, and I'm like, are you sure? I kept getting this like message this isn't it. Your time there's done. It's time to do something else. And I'm like, I really, I have this, is it the devil? Is it God? Who's talking to me? And I would talk to my husband about it, and we would pray about it. And finally, I woke up one day, I kept getting migraines too. And I took that as a sign. And I was like, I'm going to give notice. And I gave notice, and my last day was February 8th. And as soon as I did that, I felt the universe kind of align for me to be here. And even in the way we met.
Yeah. That's, I mean, just hearing your story and the trust that you put into this happening and how quickly our connection happened after you were able to make that commitment that this was what's next for you, and things fell into place the way they did. For me, the story of our meeting is so magical. It's just, I was speaking at a local event and I knew the feeling to do the podcast. It's interesting your dates, because I'm going to pull up the paper for when I wrote it that I was going to be on a podcast before the end of this year. I think it was February 8th. I know it was right in that week. I feel confident that I was like, this is happening. And then I had a little prayer stone where every time I'd pray for this podcast opportunity to come together, I would put it in my pocket, just hold the stone and be like, this stone's like recording my prayers. I don't know. It was a silly feeling. But I had it in my pocket that day we met, and it was sitting next to you, and I could feel it like glowing. When all my family's been asking, how did this happen? How did you meet this person that has produced podcasts in the top 1%? This person who was already launching her podcast and said, you're my co-star, I'll change everything, after spending 8 minutes with me.
Okay, let me add a
Yes.
little to that so you don't think I'm crazy, audience. Is because I've been praying. So I knew Chasing Self-Actualization was the name, and I knew that from years ago. Years ago, I was on a podcast with a dear friend of mine, and I don't remember the conversation, but I do remember I said the phrase like, well, we're all chasing our self-actualization, and my friend just busted out laughing and was like, who's doing that? And at the time, I was like, oh, like, dumb, like, no one does that, shh, like, and I just put it to the back of me. Then I heard it again when I went to work for this company. I kept hearing through the owner and his wife the phraseology, self-actualization. Then I was working in a nonprofit, and the nonprofit, it was for parents. It's one of the podcasts I did, and the last step was be the best version of yourself for your child, which is, in my thoughts, self-actualization.
Yeah.
So I knew Chasing Self-Actualization was always the title of this podcast, and I knew I wanted a co-host. So I prayed about it. I told you I put it on my vision board. And I've been so fortunate to have fantastic co-hosts naturally come to bear, with the podcast I did in the past. So in my head, I was thinking about this one woman that I sort of knew, but it just didn't pan out, didn't happen. Then I brought someone to channel and asked him. It was a coach, and he's in a point in his life where he really needs to have this monetized immediately, and I was like, I can't provide that for you. So that he wasn't the one. And then that's when I said to my husband, well, that's it. I'm going to go for it, and I'm just going to interview people myself. And I created the logo. I had it ready to launch, and I think I got it the day I met you, like the logo.
Wow.
And I feel that the minute I said to the universe, I'm going for it, like,
Then
the universe said, here's your guys. And what was so funny was, so I go to this networking event, which I was going to support channel more than for my own edification. And I went, and the gentleman who was hosting it said, go around the room and say what you do. And so I was like, oh, I'm a blogger and I'm podcasting. And you're like, you were walking. And you immediately, when you sat down, and then when you said, I have a podcasting rock, I'm like, Because I had just put all my crystals out for a full moon out to class.
I had just had, oh my gosh, now we know this about each other. That podcast and a few others out under the full moon, and then my moon water next to it with my written out, I will be on a podcast that reaches many and inspires and uplifts them on their journey, like the whole bit under that same moon. And then so that moon it was right around there. But when I was talking to you and hearing what you were doing, I really thought this couldn't be. Could this be? Because you said I didn't find a co-host, and I think I just said, let me co-host a couple and we'll see what happens. Like, could it be this easy? And I think that's the thing when you're in flow and what we're talking about. What is self-actualization? It's when you start living in that state, it is like that.
It's like magic.
All the time.
It's like
yeah.
magic. It's truly, like, I get chills thinking about it. And another intention behind the podcast, I think, is I want to bring guests on to talk about this because in our society, especially on social media, I think people think success is being rich and being famous or having 1 million followers. All these things that data science will show you don't necessarily make you any happier. Makes things easier. Money definitely makes things easier, but I know a lot of unhappy.
Well, there's a certain amount of money. I forget what it is, but 70.
The last time I heard it, I don't know if they've
I know it's in the
updated.
$70,000
It was
range.
$75,000.
Okay.
The happiness level above.
It doesn't improve after that. So once your bills are paid for and you can get from point A to point B in your car, the rest. And as somebody who lived off, up until a few years ago when my business took off, we often lived off $40,000. And I was really blessed to get the opportunity to have money come in and realize how little it changed. And I feel like that can sound so arrogant when you're struggling to pay your bills. But on this journey for me, when does your self-actualizing journey begin? I don't know if some people can pick a day. I can't. But I know it was November of 2018 when I said, I won't settle for anything else. I'm going all in. I'm chasing this and I'm running away from anything and anyone that doesn't see what I see. And that was the very beginning for me. And the journey of that had held such highs and lows. And understanding that, the success we talk about, money or business success, I'm so grateful to have that along the way. It is the least of the treasures I've gotten. Yes. That's true.
And that's what I wanted to kind of put into the intention behind the podcast is I want to introduce this idea of what success means to people. You can be living your best life, chasing your self-actualization, coloring stones, that people use as gratitude stones. I don't know. It could be infinite. It could be being a stay-at-home mom. It could be as long as it's what you want to be doing and it's what you love to be doing. And that's what I want to kind of change a little bit is like this idea that this is success. Success to me is being happy.
Yeah. I have a belief system that we are born with a passion inside of us and we're born with a purpose.
A mission.
And fulfilling that purpose is what makes us feel happy in a more sustaining way. And understanding what that purpose is following every little passion like breadcrumbs to lead you to that purpose. So for one of my sisters, for her, it's gardens, growing her gardens, making salsa with it, and having a farm stand. And she wouldn't be fulfilled and happy with all the money and riches. Like, that's not interesting to her. Mm-hmm. She loves this homestead lifestyle. When I go there, I don't even want to walk by a chicken to get to her house. That's not my purpose and it's not my journey. Yeah. And I think they are so different. You have to know what your purpose is before you can chase it.
Yes. And I feel that, all the podcasts I've done up until now have been preparing me for this one. Have been preparing me to, this is my mission. And it's not to self-actualize anyone. I'm not trying to sell anyone on anything. I just want people to start thinking about it and chasing their own self-actualization. Because like you, I I'm moving my hands too much. I have a belief that everyone has a mission. We're all born to do something. And I think sometimes we get confused that mission has to be this, we all have to be Oprah or Kim Kardashian, or that mission could be being the best mom in the world for that child, or it could be being the best legal secretary for that lawyer. You don't, whatever it is for you, and I've said this before, I think the way to spiritual, I'm trying to find the right word, connection is as unique to a person as their fingerprint.
Yes.
I was born Catholic, born into the Catholic faith, and I had to go through a lot in my life to become an atheist, to then turn around, be like, okay, you can find a Catholic who's a good person and, holy, to then say, okay, I have my relationship with God that's my personal. So my journey is mine. Like, all the teachers I've had, all the mentors I've had, it was like specific to me to heal. And your journey is your journey.
Somewhat similar is coming in a very fundamental Christian church and deconstructing that and really stripping away to a relationship with Source and what does that truly mean to me. But as you were talking about this journey to self-actualizing, and we're just in this back and forth, I was realizing too that we often think our purpose is this one thing, even big or small, but it's multiple things, and sometimes we can put it under an umbrella. So I have learned, for me, the umbrella is that I have a deep desire to inspire and empower other people to step into the light of all they are. And this is a great platform for that. But before podcasts or blogging or any other opportunity for that came forth, it was answering the phone when a sister called on a bad day and being the person who made her feel more inspired to move forward. And so I just think if we are following our purpose and our passion, it starts so small that you didn't realize you started, because it's just a little step. It's just answering the phone for someone.
Yeah, it's a way of living. Like, we're not going to interview anyone or say or suggest tools that haven't been suggested or discussed before us, but they're around for a reason. Prayer, meditation, affirmations, visualization, all these things. If the word meditation scares you, you need it. If prayer is something that is not involved in your life, I offer that it's different. It's different than what you may think it is, or you've been taught that it is, but it's just sitting quietly, with yourself and with Source. And we've discussed this. I use prayer and meditation interchangeably, because to me, I can't do one without the other. I have to, it's not just praying for what I want. It's thanking for, my content is almost 80% about gratitude. I'm a big believer in gratitude. Gratitude is my spiritual practice. I don't know anything that has brought me closer to Source than gratitude. And I don't say that in the false positivity gratitude of like just be grateful for everything, but in the hard fought knowledge that every hardship I've ever gone through, I'm grateful for, because on the other end of it, I learned something incredible from my growth and evolution. So I have a very strong gratitude practice, and I know I can raise my vibration with it. I know that I can see a situation and have faith that eventually I'll recognize why I'm grateful for it, even if at the moment.
Yeah. I think we can use the Daily Gratitude blog to help people deconstruct how they view gratitude. I think it's been used to shame people a lot, like you should be grateful for what you have, as if to say you shouldn't desire expansion. There's a lot of misunderstandings of what gratitude truly is and what the spirit of gratitude or the feeling of being grateful feels like, and how we can entertain that feeling. just a few seconds longer.
And there's science behind it. It's not even woo-woo stuff. There is literal science behind gratitude. And, you know, if you incorporate gratitude into your life, you start to train yourself to look for things to be grateful for. And then you start finding more things to be grateful for. And then you're happy and you're excited and you're nurturing that gratitude. You start to live a magical life. And that's what I want. And I'm not chasing numbers. I learned that from Bob Marley. If one person gets anything from anything we ever do, I'm going to be happy.
I feel so much the same way. I feel almost this whole experience and some of the things coming up for me more recently helped me understand what a calling is. Because when you feel called to something, you're not thinking about what it can gain for you or where is it going. It's calling you, so you answer.
And that's a lot of my content on TikTok has been about self-love and low self-esteem. Because when I look back at the last probably 10 years, that's the mountain I was climbing, was becoming aware that I had low self-esteem, acknowledging I had low self-esteem, deconstructing my low self-esteem, and then, you know, I was at the end of my corporate career, I was beginning to really say, okay, I don't want to say healed, because I think it's something I'm gonna, for the rest of my life, have to be like intentional about, but I'm like, okay, I'm good.
You mentioned, this is the second time I think I heard you mention that you had to become aware of your low self-esteem. When I think of self-esteem issues, it seems like something you would know you had. So share that with me, where you thought you had high self-esteem, but then realized you didn't.
I didn't think I had high self-esteem, so I didn't think that, but trying to think. I didn't realize I was operating from low self-esteem, I think is probably a more accurate way of saying it. The decisions I had made in my 20s were made from low self-esteem. Who I dated, who I married the first time. All those decisions were made from low self-esteem. People pleasing, all the yeses when everything in me was saying no.
What as soon as you said that, I recognized my people-pleasing tendencies I thought were noble and that I was nice. And then I began to realize, oh, this is not where this is coming from, not because I'm so nice.
So I was like, I had this awareness of like, oh crap, I have low self-esteem. Oh crap, I'm raising 2 girls, and I see, like, when you become aware of it, you see it. It's sort of like Sixth Sense, the movie. You see it everywhere, and you start to see the decisions you make looking for love, looking for validation outside of yourself. And again, that took me a long time to figure out and then incorporate and practice. And I don't think I'm an expert at it, but I've gotten there. Like, I love myself, and I'm in a good place. So my esteem, I would say, is healthy. I wouldn't say it's high or low, but it was definitely, I operated from low, even though I'd gone to therapy, and even though like I healed all the, like, that childhood wound, that mother wound, that father wound, I deconstructed it. I went to therapy. I thought I was good, right? But then you start to realize no, and you know, that's the frequency that I was.
And I've been catching up on your content that you've done over the last couple months on self-esteem, and it was really resonating. So I really liked how you broke it down, and I wanted to say that I really took a lot from your skincare routine as well. I was like, man, she's got a mad skincare routine. I got to pick up some of that. You've got some cool tips. So definitely go back if you want some skincare and self-esteem tips.
But going back to our intention in the podcast, so that's how this came to be, and that's why we're here. And the reason it was so easy for me to say yes, because I realized I always have the yin and the yang in my head. So when I was like, because I had, already gotten the handles, I had already gotten the logo, but it was so easy for me to say yes was because when it was presented to me, it's sort of, it's a different feeling when it's something God puts in your, like, it was just it's an awareness.
That's the self-actualizing we're chasing, but when you are in flow, the synchronicities allow easy decision making. You're not in that place of, is this my intuition or my fear or my, it's just flow.
Yeah.
And if you let it, it moves things at light speed.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. That takes us to the third question. See, you're doing fantastic.
Oh, yay.
You're a natural podcaster.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so you actually brought this up to me over text, which is that you're working on a book, and you have a book coach that you work with, and you told her about the podcast, and she suggested that we do something about 3 years from now, what's our visualization. So I'm big on visualization. If you can't visualize where you want to go, how are you going to get there?
Right.
So do it every morning for the day. I'm like, what do I want today to look like? And I love it. So I'm going to ask you, 3 years from now, what would you like to see with Chasing Self-Actualization, the podcast?
Okay, I'm going to have a little bit more fun with this exercise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that this is February of 2027. And we are recapping on 3 glorious years, just doing a little recap podcast to talk to our viewers about how happy we've been to have this opportunity to go on this journey with them. So let me just get into that person. So Marisol, this has been such an incredible journey with you these past 3 years. And I'm so glad that our listeners have asked us to continue and that we're going to be moving forward with another year of this podcast. I think some of the highlights for me have been some of the guests that really were just game changers. I'm thinking of Dr. Joe Dispenza as one. I had always wanted to interview him. I had a brief chance years ago. I met him at an event and I asked for the opportunity to. He didn't have time, and just being able to do it on the podcast, I feel like that interaction itself changed me, and knowing that our listeners got to hear those things was phenomenal. Who are some of the guests that you felt that way about?
Marianne Williamson. She was one of the reasons that I wanted to start the podcast. She was running for president, I think back in the day that we started this, and I remember her content, her message wasn't landing. Like, people just thought she was crazy, and I could recognize people couldn't understand her because they were on a different frequency. So I was like, we need to get more people on that frequency. Let's start this podcast. So having her on as a guest and talking to her, she's been, I met her a few years ago, and I said to her, it was a book signing, I said to her, you brought me back to God. And she said to me, no, you go and do that for others.
Whew, that's awesome. And then I remember having her on, your ability to really solidify things she said and make them digestible to our listeners in a way that she wasn't even always able to do. I thought that was incredible. I really enjoyed that one as well. I think for me as well, during these 3 years, it's been seeing the success of my book, which is right along these lines, and that it's gotten so many readers and allowed me the opportunity to work with a publishing company, which has been really phenomenal. So just seeing how this podcast has interacted with our listeners and brought in more readers. One thing that I noticed we get is, people who email us who say how it's changed their life. So what's an email that you read that really stuck with you about how the work you've done on this podcast over the last 3 years has really impacted someone?
I think the messages I get, there's 2. Actually, and they're broken down by gender. I get a lot of messages from men who relate to wanting to have a spiritual practice, don't know how to go about it, and have found, our content really helps them be healthier men. And then on the women's side, on the girl side, I love hearing from the women, the public speaking I do. I have a whole speech about stop apologizing and just working with girls and ladies and women to chase their self-actualization, to recover from low self-esteem, to learn to love themselves. I could die tomorrow and I could die a happy woman.
It's amazing to hear. I'm going to share one of my favorites was an email that we received from one of our listeners, and she had been through a divorce. She had a few children, and she really felt that she had to hang up her dreams to launch her business and do some bigger things for herself because now she was the sole breadwinner. And she said in listening to our podcast, she just would realize that it would be through chasing those dreams, and also that she felt she had to sacrifice that for her kids. And so it was through all of the things she was learning from the guests we brought on that she realized the opposite to be true, that it was in chasing her self-actualization that her children had something to model, and that life would put her in flow. And so her needs would be met in a way she never imagined. And I just remember reading that thinking, like, what more than to have a person's life change that dramatically? They felt stuck, and now they know they're not.
Yeah.
You know?
One thing I love about podcasting is if we're doing it right, they feel like they're in the room with us. And I love that we have built, this little army of self-actualizing people who are chasing it, who are chasing being the best version of themselves, who are healing, because it's a healing journey. It's a healing journey, and I don't think it's a destination. I think it's a journey that we're all on. So I'm excited. I'm excited for the next 3 years.
Same.
Well, with that, y'all, that was your first podcast. You did
Woo-woo.
fantastic.
Yay.
We could have posted this
Okay.
as is. It's that good.
So I feel like the biggest takeaways were my hands
It's with practice.
and
yeah.
holding this up so that you can hear me better.
For me, I would say that if you really get in tune with listening to your sound,
Okay.
this will dictate this. Because when you're making really good points, you walk away.
When I'm excited and in the moment, I'm no longer paying attention to any of the parts of this. So when you're talking, I feel really conscious, like, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm not moving. When I'm excited, I'm like, whoa.
That's a fair. That's a fair. Well, thank you everyone for joining our first live. We will be doing more of these. These are our practice sessions before we launch our Chasing Self-Actualization podcast on June 5th. It will be available on all major streaming platforms. And on our TikTok, we will be sharing our content, and I hope you follow us. Thank you.
Bye.
You did
Ooh.
fantastic.
This was so fun. Gosh, I love it. So when we
Wait, how do you stop?
did we have even one person
There's
pass
people
by?
on
Yeah,
there.
yay!
I wonder if I stop that.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh, we actually have people that joined. Hello, people that joined. I don't know how to get out though. People, how do we leave?
Nope. I don't know how to do this. Oh my gosh. How do we stop recording? I really truly don't know. Maybe that? Yes.
I think that makes it a perfect ending. We didn't know how to leave the live. Super fun.
You did brilliantly. Like,
Okay.
I'm not blowing smoke up your
Okay.
butt.
Thank you.
are natural. You
All
are
right.
natural.
Awesome.
And the little things that that's practice.
Okay,
You're going to be great.
this
You're
is
gonna be
great. I had so much fun, even just us doing that. If you said once a week, come and we'll do that, and we don't air it, I would be like, okay.
So that would be the set. I didn't record, or it's recording and I don't know. Hi. But
I think this works. Do it as a live, upload the live on YouTube, or save them and upload them later.
I will.
I don't think
figure out
it
how to
matters that much. We're not going to get like a YouTube following tomorrow.
Yeah.
But if we save the Facebook lives, and then we're going to we'll have a weekly live for the
we got to have that
TikTok,
frequency.
or for the TikTok live, right?
Well,
How is it?
whatever. I hadn't thought that far ahead on the TikTok, but I definitely think we can record them live.
Was that live on TikTok or Facebook?
TikTok.
TikTok. So I mean for our TikTok channel or whatever.
Oh, do another phone, like record on the second phone on Facebook Live.
I wasn't even thinking about that. I just misspoke, but you could.
Oh,
You could do both as a
We
live.
got people that came on.
That was so
That's
cool.
crazy. And someone hearted our stuff. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh.
Well, anyway, but what I was thinking of, just speaking of TikTok, I can send you some things. You'll create some things. We'll do the weekly live, which I think it's cute that we're like just being really raw. So even if we're about to record, okay, this is our first actual recording, and you're giving me cues, and anyone who wants to get into podcasting is learning with me. Like, that's great.
The only thing I'm thinking about is when we have guests. I don't know how we're gonna.
Yeah, the positioning would be.
With a video, a person in
Yeah.
a video.
I mean, you could move this to here and have them kind of kitty cornered, but I don't know that we need to show the guest.
Well,
If we really wanted to, yeah, we'll figure that out. I think the focus being the good quality, getting the podcast going. I have the trip is going to be really like 3 kids at Disney. I think I'm not going to be able to come up for air. So
yeah, no, I'm not.
so until I come back from that, I won't have any content to send you for anything. But once I come back, we can have our next meeting. We might discuss what do we want.
So what can I tell you
How do
what
we bring all this content together? Yeah.
Here's what I'm planning on doing next, because I'm here next week. So my biggest. Why did I grab this? I didn't need this. The biggest thing I'm working on is my taxes.
It's what?
My taxes.
Oh, me too. That's all day tomorrow, and then I have like 2 days devoted to it when I get back.
Okay. So, but here's what I'm gonna do. The only thing I really need from you is if you get us the emails and that Google Space thing set up,
Well, it wouldn't let me.
even with the.
Yeah, it thinks I'm a scammer for some reason. I'll show you what. So I guess the email I sent you wasn't coming up that way.
It just took me to Google.
So when I went to it, this is what I get, but I guess because I'm logged into my,
Your Google.
well, no, it doesn't want to. So it wanted me to set it up.
So that's what I was saying is, I'm saying let's create daily gratitude blog emails. And then try to use that.
Trying to set it up like this. You didn't get this when I sent it because it must have been on my handle. But if you go to...
It was we had 324 viewers.
Really?
And 1 comment. I'm scared to read the
Oh, what's our comment?
How do you see it?
Cool.
How do you see the comment? I don't know. Suggested live videos, 95%. I don't know how you see the comments there.
I wonder if I can... Oh, I didn't mean...
Oh, look at it. So this is where the video comes, auto download, and you can clip.
Nice. That's the easiest way then.
It was 45 minutes.
Oh, it flew by.
But I don't see the comments. So this is what I was thinking about. So this is what I'm planning on doing in the next week while you're on vacation, is getting organized. Like I want to write the list, the email
Outreach
template for people I want to.
My stuff's not really working, but
Do you want a password for this? Does that play here?
I don't think I need that right now. Let me just Google. Maybe it won't let us do it. Maybe it will. But
Did I do this? Did this record? I can't tell.